Welcome to the Front Office Exchange, where we take a look at the careers of executives and rising stars within the sports business. Now here's your host, Jake Vailing.
This is episode 8 of the Front Office Exchange podcast, and our guest today is Natalie Best, Executive Vice President and Director of Client Service at French West Vaughan, one of the fastest growing PR agencies in the world. I was really excited to interview Natalie. It's a little bit of a departure from what we've done in the first few episodes here. French West Vaughan has clients in the sports world, yes, with Michael Vick probably being the client of theirs that has garnered them the most, PR. But they also work with Wrangler, and you may be familiar with some of their ads involving another quarterback, Brett Favre, as well as what it's doing with its network as it relates to professional rodeo and other events for all of you professional rodeo fan listeners out there. But French West Vaughan is a generalist firm at heart. So therefore, Natalie doesn't work exclusively in sports business like you've heard from some of the past guests. But she used to, though. When she first came out of school, she worked for the NBA's league offices in New York, and then she moved on to the old Charlotte Hornets in her former state of North Carolina. Natalie and I are actually from the same hometown, and we're both Tar Heels, which I know is gross at this point. You're tired of hearing from all the Carolina folks. I promise we'll move on from them, but hey, I'm a homer at heart. And she offers a really neat perspective on how her career has evolved, including what it's like to be married to someone who works in sports as well. So without further ado, French West Vaughan's Natalie Best. Natalie, hello.
Hi, how you doing, Jake?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start with your day-to-day. So as Executive Vice President, Director of Client Service for French West Vaughan, tell us a little bit about your firm and what your day-to-day looks like.
Well, we are a 20-year-old national PR and marketing agency. We're headquartered in Raleigh, but we also have offices in Tampa, New York, and we have a partnership with a production studio in Los Angeles. And our roster of clients and partners ranges from some of the largest companies in the world to startups. And within that group are lots of consumer brands, lots of brands you've heard of, lots of sports and entertainment properties. So just about any company that you can think of, we work with or have a hand in shaping.
So you are a generalist firm. I mean, you're in all types of industries, right?
We are. We are most well known for our work in the consumer space, but we are most definitely a generalist firm, yes. And
so someone catching – oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say each day is different. So with a diverse client roster that comes with companies and brands that have different needs, whether it's selling a product or service, whether it's trying to raise their awareness, whether it's helping to mend some reputation issues. Each of those comes with a different challenge. So we try to look at each and every one a little bit differently.
Okay. So as a generalist firm, someone who is now on one of the first episodes of the Front Office Exchange Sports Business podcast are probably wondering, why is Natalie on this podcast? But so if we go all the way back before French West Vaughan, make it sound like it was back in the 60s. It wasn't that long ago, don't worry. You started your career in sports out of UNC, correct?
I did. So I tried in college, even before I graduated, to get as much experience as possible in the sports space. So before I even graduated, tried to collect some experience along the way with working at UNC Sports Information, working with North Carolina Amateur Sports, which is the organization that puts on the state games, as well as some other events here in North Carolina. And then also was lucky enough to be picked for an internship with the Orlando Magic that was during the summer of 1996, which happened to be the summer that Shaq left them for the Lakers. So that alone was a tremendous experience before even getting out of college, which kind of helped establish a springboard into some other things that certainly helped me today.
Great. And to go back even further, you and I are from the same small town, Pinehurst, North Carolina, Southern Pines area. And,
an area that does have golf and some of the large tournaments in golf, but it's not exactly a large city where easy access through networking, maybe coming up to teams like the Magic and so on and so forth, were easily accessible. So, when you talk about being lucky enough, I think you're being modest, but to get that internship with the Magic, was that about leveraging your network there at Chapel Hill, or how did you find that?
Well, I'll answer that by saying, when students and young professionals come through our agency today and they start asking, how do you get a job? Help me figure out how to get in the door. I mean, I tell them to leverage the power of their degree. And in my case, coming from Chapel Hill and working in an athletic department that was as well known as and is as well known as Carolina is, that really helps. And I think, quite honestly, I mean, people look at your resume if you have those things on it as a 19 or 20-year-old. So being able to get that experience and have a resume that had much more on it than just a GPA and some class listings was really the key at that point. And then once you get one internship, it leads to another, and that was certainly the luck that helped me then land a position in New York at the league office, which is a hard thing to do, but I was really lucky to do that.
Yeah, and just like me, I strung together some internships as well. And the goal here is to not get paid as long as possible, correct?
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Because once you get on that program, it never stops.
It's fantastic. You continue to live at home. So you were at the Magic, and then you went to New York. So how was that experience? I know a lot of people that at some point in their career say, I want to do the New York thing. Was that a little bit of that for you? I know Orlando was the largest city that you were in at that point in your career, but the 2 years that you were with the NBA, I guess, speak to that from a personal and professional perspective.
Well, to go to New York, I mean, and to get a job at the league office, I mean, you realize that jobs in sports are not for sports fans. I mean, a lot of people think they are, but they're for people that have or are trying to develop sales skills, marketing skills, technical skills, business skills. I mean, most of those jobs in sports are on the business side. There are very few that are on the basketball operations side, for example. So, I mean, once I got to New York, you quickly realize that it's not a game, and people that work, especially for the top pro leagues, they take that very seriously each and every day. And certainly coming out of college with a job like that was something I didn't take for granted, and collected that experience and then parlayed that over to a position with the Charlotte Hornets, the original Hornets, and was lucky enough to be with them for their last 4 original seasons in Charlotte before they took a break from having a franchise in that market.
Got it. Was that a goal for you to get back to North Carolina?
It was not. It was opportunistic. I mean, that job came open. My goal, I think, was at that point was if something came open back in the Southeast, whether that be in a market like D.C. or Charlotte or Orlando or Atlanta, something like that, I was certainly going to look there first, and that was what happened. And was lucky enough to take my league experience and transfer that down to the team level, and be able to collect a different vision point there.
Yeah, so I was just curious about that. How were those two experiences different? You touched on it. You hit the nail on the head. In New York, they do not mess around. We get a bad rap down here in the South. Things move a little more slowly. We talk a little bit more slowly. When you got down to the Hornets, did you say, oh, wow, this is more relaxed? Or is that just the nature of being with a team versus the league? Or just what were the differences?
The differences are at the team level, it is all about winning. And everything that you do, and for me, it was in the PR and communications department, everything that we did was to support how can we help our franchise win, how can we help our franchise sell more tickets, how can we be a very good member of the community. everything should be in that vein. At the league office, it's much more from an administration standpoint. You want to do what you can to support all teams. You're putting umbrella programs in place for each and everybody. But at that team level, when you report to an owner who has a $200-300 million in property in their team, it's all about winning.
What was it like as a PR professional during those last few years with the team leaving Charlotte? I know it was ugly.
It was it was not pretty, but from a professional standpoint, I mean, there's very few situations that you can be put in that are like you can't recreate what we went through those last 4 seasons in Charlotte, where we had the death of a player in Bobby Phills. We had an owner who was on trial. We had a franchise that was going to relocate, so there was a struggle there. There was disputes with the city over how to raise the funding for a downtown arena. All of these things that we look back on now, that were 15 and 20 years ago. But from a professional standpoint, there was, you couldn't recreate that if you wanted to in a situation to be able to learn from. And really, I'm able to put those practices and those key learnings and those trial and error situations in play now in the agency world.
Got it. And did you help them wind things down in Charlotte before they moved to New Orleans?
I did. And I worked for one of the great veterans of the NBA and professional PR world in Harold Kaufman, who is now with the Mets in New York.
Right.
But so worked to support him and his department in the transition down to New Orleans, and did help with that as well.
Got it. So here you are in the summer of 2002. You're on this fast track through professional basketball, NBA, the team level. Then your team moves. You're in North Carolina. So what is going through your mind, if you can give us a little peek into, I guess, personally, your decision-making process on, I don't want to make it more dramatic than it was, but was it, hey, I want to stay in the sports industry, let's see what else is out there, or this is time for me to make a change? Just curious what happened there during that time.
Yeah, I had a pretty hardcore labeled sports resume, and I had always wondered, having come out of journalism school at Chapel Hill, and had always kind of wondered what do those agencies do? And you hear about them, and there's ad agencies and PR firms and digital shops, and what do they really do? I mean, those consultants, how does that work? And so that was a good time for me to test that. And I really wasn't sure, Jake, to be honest. And I wanted to try a firm that had a diverse roster that did play in the sports and entertainment space, because I had so much experience there. I knew my skills would transfer: the writing, the media relations, the marketing, the promotions, all that stuff I'd done. But I wanted to diversify a little bit without losing my experience, and that worked out really well for me to move over to French West Vaughan, and obviously I'm still here.
So how has the firm changed since you've been there? I know it's now almost 15 years. I'm sure it's undergone some changes and clients and things like that, and we talked a little bit about the beginning, how it's a generalist firm, but I know you also have many clients in the sports industry as well. So how has your role evolved there? I'm sure you've been through several titles, and then 2, the sports arm particularly. How have you grown that practice?
For me personally, I mean, my role has changed mostly just in increased responsibility and becoming a principal of the firm, and lots of responsibility with new business and things like that. But the core of what we do here, that hasn't changed in terms of the service that we provide, other than in 2002 we were not offering the social media and digital services at the volume we do today, which is tremendous. And I don't think you talk to anybody in any space of marketing or PR that isn't doing that today. In terms of our client roster, we maintain several of those clients that were here in 2002, which is something you don't hear about, and is something that our owner and founder Rick French prides himself on, and something we try to continue each and every day. In terms of the sports side of things, we continue to grow that practice. We've worked with everybody from individual professional athletes, NFL and NBA alike, probably the most well-known being Michael Vick, who we still work with. And then on the brand side and on the association side of things, I mean, there's a suite of clients from Fleet Feet, which is continuing to open franchise doors every day in the running space, to Nathan Sports, which is a major player in that running category in the hydration gear and visibility space. We work with several brands under the M+ umbrella. They're a large footwear and recreational accessory company that most people have never heard of. They probably know their brands, but don't know their parent company. And then, have worked with all kinds of properties like the U.S. Polo Association to help them build the awareness and the popularity of the sport of polo in this country. We've helped lots of nonprofits under the USOC umbrella, such as the U.S. Speed Skating Organization. We helped them in their last two Winter Olympics. Speedo. Lots of brands that are critical to the sports space, but maybe they come to us looking for a different need. So it might not be awareness, it might not be ticket sales, it might be driving people to retail or reputation management, things like that.
So at the point when you retained Vic, I know that was right after his well-documented situation. So, at that point, were you in the role that you're in now, or were you in a hands-on? I think you were beyond the hands-on kind of account management, but I'm sure that was a decision that reverberated around the entire firm. It was a decision that everybody was involved with. Do we take this on, and how do we craft his story? So just could you walk through that a little bit for me?
Sure. It's been many years since we started working with him and continue that work today. And obviously it was very, very, very sensitive at that time and still is for some people. The work that we have done in partnership, really he's done the work, I should say. We just worked with him to help him identify opportunities to help him regain his commitment to the community, and to help him along the way as he re-entered the NFL, to focus on the things that he wanted to do to help repair himself, and do more than his court-ordered the things that he had to do with the Humane Society and others. I mean, he really wanted to get into communities and tell his story in boys and girls clubs and other places. So helping him with those strategic alliances and just understanding the demands of his career along the way and how those programs could work hand in hand. And it has turned out really well for him. And he did everything he needed to do, and has been able to kind of close out his career, I think, in a way that has made himself and his family and his fans pretty proud.
Well, easy now. Close out his career. I mean, guys are dropping like flies right now.
That's right. I should say wind down. He could certainly be back on a roster at any point in time. It's certainly the way quarterbacks have been going down in the first few weeks of this season. So right. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that.
Right. And maybe this is a homer question, and you've been obviously in a senior leadership position there for a while now, but, as you bring in those Vicks, the Wranglers, the work they do on the rodeo, the work you're doing with the national governing bodies, do you find yourself at any point gravitating more toward those clients, or because of your roots in sports, do you, for lack of a better term, do you have more fun with those?
Sure. I mean, it was always my passion point, and it still is. And I'm a fan of just about every sport. And there's a lot of work I'd love to do. I'd love to see us do more in the golf space as I'm trying to get my game going.
That's the Pinehurst in you.
That's exactly right. That goes back to our roots. So yeah, I mean, those are always a lot of fun. But at the same time, we're doing some really cool stuff in the areas of, let's say, branded journalism. We have created a program with Wrangler called the Wrangler Network, which is an online network very similar to Red Bull TV, where all the content is Western lifestyle focused. So we are live streaming rodeos. We are showing concerts, all kinds of things that speak to the core audience of that brand. And everybody wants mobile first. So, being able to work with a brand like Wrangler to create a branded journalism property like that has been something really, really cool. And besides the fact that they have endorsees on their roster like Dale Jr. and Drew Brees and many others. So there's an aspect to that to just about every company that we work with.
Okay. Now let's switch gears a little bit and let's go on the personal side. Now, you are married to Kevin Best, assistant SID at the University of North Carolina. Now, did you meet when you were in Charlotte, or walk me back to that a little bit?
Yeah, we met back at Carolina. He had returned there to work, and I was finishing up things, and that was kind of my introduction to him. And certainly he has a very successful career of his own there at UNC, working with the football program and in the athletic department. He also just returned from working his 10th Olympic Games. He is a venue manager and has been lucky to work the Olympics for every 2 years because it's winter, summer. So, that's certainly been exciting for him and for us as a family. And that international experience for him is something that is unique and special and something that I certainly learned from as well.
So husband, wife, PR power couple. How do you make it work? Obviously, you touched on it. He is tied up in Carolina football. He is very well thought of by the U.S. Olympic Committee and the International Olympic Committee and managing these venues. That's a lot of travel. That's a lot of time. And that's just what comes with sports, as you know, starting in that industry. So can you give us a little peek inside the Best family and just how you make that work as a couple and as a family?
Yeah, we have ESPN on a lot
right.
to start with, but it works. I mean, and honestly, like, communication is probably the key to it all. I know you know that, Jake, with your busy schedule and your family and professional demands, but making sure everybody knows what everybody else has got going on and trying to prioritize your family in the place that it should be, which is first, and then all your other commitments after that. And just making sure everybody works together. And so it works out well.
Did your move out of sports, was that part of, you saw Kevin's career as well? I mean, did that come into play at all?
Not at all. My, move to the agency side of things was really about diversifying the skill sets that I had and taking a position with a great company that was on a tremendous growth path, and we've kind of been able to maintain and kind of do all the things that we want to do professionally. So I just say we're really lucky.
Are your kids into the Olympics as well?
They are. They definitely are. And I mean, there's so much storytelling around the Olympics. So not only about the competition, but just the stuff that you learn about what's going on in the world, I think has been invaluable for our kids in watching that and understanding that their dad's traveling to Russia and Beijing and Rio and all of these places around the world that are hosting international events.
I'm sure the amount of Olympic swag in your house is unbelievable.
It is. He came back with these flip-flops that were super popular. and a few other things he tells me were like the items of the year. So I got to look that up.
The items of the year in Olympics are the weirdest things ever. So Salt Lake, it was the beanie, and it's bizarre.
Yep. So who knows what they'll come up with for South Korea, but.
Well, you could tell Kevin at some point I'll have him on, maybe when I get into the 200s in the episodes. I mean, at some point people are going to say, okay, enough with the North Carolina tie-ins here. But I know he's got some interesting stories to tell. So now let's bring it just in general now. You work with executives that are, decades into their career. You work obviously on the agency side, but you've been with teams earlier in your career. What is the best advice that you, one, have ever been given as a professional? And then what advice do you give, obviously students coming out, they're looking for a job. But again, I'm sure you also talk to executives that are at a point in their career. Maybe it was like you when you said, hey, I want to diversify, or, two, let's say they lost their job and, they're looking to transition their career.
I mean, the best advice I've ever gotten is just the idea that hard work trumps everything. And there may be people that are more talented, or there may be people that are smarter than you, quote unquote, but the people that work harder are the ones that succeed. And that advice, that's advice for all. And I continue to see that at the CEO level, down to, college students trying to figure out what they want to do. And I try to live by that myself. And what was the second question, Jake? The advice I give?
Yeah, that's advice you give. Just curious if there's been someone in your career that maybe has passed along advice to you, or someone that you've looked up to. And I guess to take that even further, that hard work, obviously you're doing something right there at French West Vaughan. So, was there a point in your career there where there was a turning point that got you on this track to your principal there today, you said?
Yeah, the time I spent at the league office working with really some of the icons in NBA communications world, Brian McIntyre, Terry Lyons, Jan Hubbard, people like that just at the beginning of your career, if you can work with professionals like that have made their career off of hard work and, knowing how to build relationships, that is something, especially in this field, that is very helpful, because on the agency and the consulting side, clients want to know that you care, and they want to know that not only are you going to work to help, solve their business objective, but that, you're going to be committed to them, and that, it's a partnership. It's not really a client relationship, and we try to use that word as much as possible. It comes naturally to say partner, but that's what those guys, in the league office, that's what they taught me early on.
What are you looking for at French West Vaughan in an account executive? And let's make it even specific to sports. So let's say you've got an event that you're running, a sports event, and you need someone to manage that account, all the way from the junior account executive to someone who has 10 years of experience. Are you looking for someone that has worked primarily in sports events, or are you a big believer in transferable skills?
Totally transferable skills. So writing is critical, because you have to be able to write for every kind of audience, whether that's a tweet, whether that's an email that needs to go to somebody on the corporate side. Those skills are invaluable. And, nowadays being able to clearly communicate yourself, whether it's in a phone call, whether it's in a moment of stress, or something unexpected has happened that's gone off plan. People that are able to handle themselves in those situations, that show those types of good habits, those are the people that succeed in this type of environment where there's a lot of different things going on. We can't come to work come to work and just think about one thing. And that's the way it is in sports too. I mean, whether you're at the professional level, the amateur level, the association level, whatever it might be, I mean, you have a multitude of objectives, and being able to show those really good habits and those really good communication skills are totally the key.
What work are you proudest of there? And if you can keep it specific to sports, that would be great. And then on the flip side, is there someone else? There's other firms out there, other PR marketing firms. Is there someone out there that you look at, that your colleagues look at and say, God, I love what they're doing, either from the agency side or from a property or brand itself, just a campaign that maybe really resonates with you?
I mean, there's other firms kind of in our space. Taylor is one that comes to mind that does a lot of work in the sports space. They'll represent clients like Allstate and their work around bowl the college bowl season, or Coin PR, which is based in New York, which is home to one of my other favorites from the NBA league office, Chris Brianza, who you should really talk to. And he's working with the USGA and with the Harlem Globetrotters and others. So there's a lot of comparable firms like ours that has a corporate base but works with those companies that use sports and use that emotional tie to sports to help sell their product or deliver their service. I love some of the programs that companies like Wasserman are doing. They represent American Express, and I'm always, when I went to the U.S. Open and other golf events, I love to see how they're activating on their programs for American Express. So, I mean, there's all kinds of places to look. There's no shortage of that. I saw this week where Under Armour, has gone and used Fashion Week to launch a fashion brand under their Under Armour umbrella, and they've been so well known in the competitive space and aligning themselves with athletes at the highest level. So to see what they're doing, I'm going to watch that carefully to see if that works out for them. So there's no shortage of those places to look.
Is this where you tell me now that Brett Favre is going to wear Wranglers to Fashion Week?
It isn't, no. Not that I'm aware of. But if he does, that would certainly help.
That would get headlines for sure. Well, I know you're a big believer of professional growth, continuing professional growth. Before we started recording, you were talking about working with not-for-profits there in Raleigh. What do you lean on? What do you use to help you personally? I've asked past guests, is it conferences that you attend? Are you a podcast listener? What do you do outside of French West Vaughan to continue to learn and to grow as an executive?
Couple things. So two parts to that. One is I try to serve on boards, particularly nonprofit boards. Right now I'm serving on the Y board, Alexander Y board here in the Triangle. And so being around other peers that in that capacity where you're fiscally responsible for helping run an organization like the Y that provides guidance and support in the community through athletic programs and others that are related is a continual source of professional development for me. I try to read. I just finished. I try when there's time,
right,
outside of the trades and those kinds of things. But I just finished Shoe Dog, which I thought was really, really good. I had not read Phil Knight's other books about Nike, but I thought this one was particularly revealing about kind of some of his regrets and, some of the things that he wanted to do to leave a mark on the world. It was really his dreams and aspirations in the 60s and 70s as he was trying to get the company up and going. And, I found that to be, humbling and it kind of brings you back to how some of these huge brands get started, and you tend to take that stuff for granted. So things like that. I mean, that's what I try to do, put myself around as many of those people as possible.
What's next for you and the firm?
We are going to celebrate our 20th anniversary next year.
Wow! Congratulations.
Yeah, which is really cool. And again, just try to focus on the companies that we work for and the brands that entrust us with their name, and kind of celebrate that, and try to continue to grow some of those relationships. And as their business grows, so should ours. And continuing to try to come up with innovative programs like the Wrangler Network or the Run emojis that we just created for Fleet Feet that are going to be out in just a couple weeks.
Cool. What's a Run emoji?
Well, they did. If you check any of the apps that supply the extra emojis, there weren't any that showed males or females running. And then
is that right?
That is correct. And
I've been sent billions of emojis and bitmojis over the last just year, and I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've ever seen one of someone running. Interesting. Okay.
Well, they just did the upgrade within the last couple of weeks, and they did create some, but there were some things about them that a lot of people had comments about females having their hair down, things like that just that doesn't happen. So it sounds silly, but
that's a great point. Now I'm picturing a woman running with her hair down.
Exactly.
That would be just a mess.
What is that? So anyway, those kinds. It sounds funny and it's interesting, but that's stuff that consumers want, and they want it to be authentic and they want it to be real. And coming up with those kinds of programs there's no shortage of those challenges.
Got it. So since you're from Pinehurst, I can use this metaphor with you. I've asked some past guests as well. You're playing around a golf. Let's say number 2 is too cliche. Let's say you're number 8, Pinehurst number 8, and you need to round out a foursome. You can choose athletes. You could choose former colleagues, current colleagues, but they've got to be from the sports business or sports industry. Who would those 3 people be that you'd like to play with?
Oh God, I'm gonna have to give some thought to this, Jake. This is not that's too critical of an opportunity. Because
no, it is a critical opportunity. You could do I think Michael Beal, who he said it was like Michael Jordan. He went straight to the top.
Yeah.
Or Tiger Woods. He was not messing around. Or you could just go, people that are titans in the industry. But if you mess this up, Natalie, this podcast is going to live forever.
That's pressure. Well, everybody wants Jordan and Woods for sure.
Right.
Because just with both of their golf games and others, and I'd throw Mia Hamm in there. I heard she's a great golfer, and I got to have somebody to hit with me from the red tees in that foursome. So,
anybody in the industry, sports business wise, that you've worked with, maybe looked up to?
There's been a ton, and I mentioned some of them. The Brian McIntyres of the world who are in the Basketball Hall of Fame. Like I said, those guys, Terry Lyons, Jan Hubbard, those guys that traveled with the Dream Team in '92 and that worked in the NBA that I had the chance to work with very, very early. Those guys, those are the ones, and they give each and every person their opportunity to, even if they're 22-year-olds that just graduate from UNC that come to New York and are the lowest person in their department. Those are the people that I looked up to and that gave me the opportunity, and I will always be indebted to them.
So just so we're clear, you just kicked Michael Jordan to the curb for Brian McIntyre?
Not in the golf foursome, no. Okay. No. Not in the golf foursome, no.
All right, so you went with a power foursome as well.
I sure did.
All right, so where do you hang out online? Are you LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram stories? Where can people find you, and where do you spend most of your time?
I love Instagram. And we are doing a ton of programs for our clients on using social platforms, but definitely Twitter, at Best25, certainly on Instagram. And then, in terms of sports, I mean, Sports Business Daily is still the Bible, and their content doesn't change. They really have stayed true to their reporting, and I definitely use them as a source of news each and every day. And that concept, when that was created about 20 years ago, or maybe even longer, hasn't been watered down by any means. So,
right. And what platform are you seeing right now? I know it changes every day. I can't even imagine keeping up with it on your end. But are clients now loving Instagram stories, or is Snapchat still as popular as it was?
It depends on your audience and who your consumer group is. But I will. This isn't the new shiny object, but Facebook is still where it is.
Right.
I mean, there are more people on Facebook than there are any of these other social channels. And we actually had a meeting up at Facebook in New York about 2 months ago, where we got to sit down with some of their staff, and they went through with us what are some of their strategic objectives for the year ahead, and what should we be counseling our clients on, and how they're heavily investing in Facebook Live as their kind of competitive answer to Twitter, which has been kind of owning the breaking news category. So, there's a whole bunch of new shiny objects coming up, but kind of the big four, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, those are still really leading the way in terms of volume.
Well, great. I appreciate you taking time today. I think you've got a really unique perspective on the sports industry, obviously being married to someone who's prominent in sports business as well and sports PR. And then you've built a really impressive career at French West Vaughan. So thank you, Natalie, for taking the time. And I wish you all the best there. I know people are going to be able to find you at Keenan Stadium in Chapel Hill a lot this fall, too.
Definitely. And definitely we'll see you there, Jake.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Front Office Exchange, where you hear about the careers of some of the leading executives in sports business. Visit us at frontofficeexchange.com, on Facebook at Front Office Exchange, and on Twitter at Front Office EXCH to access past episodes, show notes, and much, much more.